Welcome everyone, my name is Ryan and we are back with more Vintage Story. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at one of the new game mechanics for the upcoming 1.22 patch. Now it's not out as of yet, 1.22, but I'm playing in the pre-5 version and I hope we're going to be seeing the release candidate in the next couple of weeks. Around mid-March was the last that we've got from the developers of Vintage Story, but we do know that there are big changes coming to the berry bushes, and we're going to be taking a sneak peek at some of those right now. But remember, we're still in early access, and of course the patch is not out, so consider all of this just temporary. This is more of just a preview video than a true guide, so things are always subject to change. But with that said, let's dive into the bushes and find out what exactly these changes are all about. Alright everybody, here we are in my little berry bush laboratory. I've been trying out and testing a whole bunch of different stuff with these bushes, and of course I'm going to share all that info with you, but I think the first place to probably start today is the guidebook. Now I do want to mention that although we do have a pretty good grasp of what these bushes are going to be like, still subject to change, and even Tyrone has said that this guidebook entry could get updated or filled out with new or different information. But here we are, we're looking at one of the variants. This is the beauty berry bush, and we'll talk a little bit more about this and the differences, although I don't know too much about this one. But we can see down below that we do have a guide for proper care and propagation of the fruiting bushes. So let's go through this together really quickly, and then like I said, we'll look at some demonstrations and examples of the bushes themselves. So for propagation, wild fruiting bushes cannot be moved. If you break them, you will just drop plant debris, and we'll see that again here shortly. However, you can propagate them by obtaining a cutting via the control right mouse clicking with a knife in your hand and planting that cutting in medium or higher fertility soil. Very important to note, it will not accept plantings in low fertility. You can only take one cutting per bush per year. Keep that in mind. It doesn't destroy the bush, but like it says, it's limited. The cuttings will take 6 to 12 months to grow into a fully mature bush capable of fruiting. Note that the fruit bushes can have special traits that make them better or worse in some aspects than others, and these characteristics will be propagated along with the cutting. So you can actually, do like a whole genealogy with your berry bushes now. It's actually pretty cool. It's essentially taking the berry bushes and moving them into the agricultural parts of the game, which I think is really fun. Yeah. So hopefully we'll see something like that maybe with the fruit trees too at some point, like a more intensive system that we have to care for them. But either way, let's move on here. So fruit bushes can have 4 health states: bountiful, healthy, struggling, and barren. The more healthy the bush, the more fruit it will yield, and the health status will be reflected in the quantity of flowers and fruits visible on the bush. Wild bushes will only be found in the healthy or struggling state. So in other words, when you generate a brand new world, you can find some with berries on them, but they're not going to be bountiful, and you won't find any that are barren, just in the intermediate stages essentially. The health of wild bushes cannot be changed, and you cannot add fertilizer to them. Propagated bushes, however, can have their health improved by fertilization, or conversely worsened by neglect. And unlike crops, fertilizer is applied directly to the bush and not the soil underneath, and that's important. Fruiting bushes do not require watering. Unlike crops, nor do the nutrients of the bushes replenish yearly the way farmland does. Each time a propagated bush produces a harvest, it will use up some of the fertilizer that has been applied to it. If the total fertilizer falls below certain thresholds, the bush will decline in health. The health will not necessarily decline every harvest, but a bush would in most cases require a couple years of continual harvest and no fertilization to go from bountiful to barren health. In the long term, propagated bushes' need for fertilizer will decline over time until about 20 years. Then they will not need any. All right. Well, that was definitely a lot of helpful information. Essentially, everything we need to know is in that guide. And if you're looking for it again, just search for the word bush and it will be listed under any of these here, that same info that we just read. Yeah, now let's talk about some of the differences. If we go back, we can see the old standards are here: cranberry, blueberry, the red currant, white, and black. But we do have these beauty berry bushes, which I don't quite understand what this is, if it's a new type of bush. This is one of them right up here, actually. Let's go into creative so that we can float a little bit. Yeah, I was just stacking them like this to try and get a better screenshot, so this isn't necessary. But this is one of the beauty berry bushes, as you can see. It's not quite, oh, it is ready to be harvested, and it gives us a beauty berry. These have 80 saturation, fresh for 2 days, turns into juice, beauty berry. So again, I'm not super familiar with what a beauty berry is, or if that's even a real thing, which seems unusual. I know that typically they like to keep the foods and stuff pretty true to life, in the vintage story. But either way, there's wild and, of course, domesticated version. So here we can see a wild white currant. I think we've got some wild beauty berries over here. So yeah, just as the guide stated, it's important to note that the wild and domesticated varieties have some specific differences. Now, this one is wild. You'll notice in the tooltip, there's no kind of soil or fertilizer info. Whereas if we look over here, yeah, there's nutrient levels in the top up there. So those are important. And I added those by right-clicking with the fertilizer. And now you can see the slow release fertilizer is leveling up. It goes all the way to a max of 150. And that will slowly add to those nutrient levels over time. Here we can add some more. What I've actually done with these bushes is I accelerated time a little bit in this world just to try and get them to grow. And you can see we've got bountiful state here. These are mature. So yeah, these were bushes, started like this and just took time to grow and grow and grow. But you cannot plant them in the tilled soil. They won't even go in there. Let's see if we can demonstrate that real quick. So I think what we'll do is we'll try and take a cutting from one of these. Boom, right there. So just by holding right click and then, or the control and then right clicking with my knife in my hand, we're able to get this black currant cutting. And like I said, it will not let me place it in tilled soil. It's got to be just, boom, regular blocks of high or medium fertility. This low fertility will not work. Now let's see what happens when we break one of these. We did get the little cutting back, so that's important to note. Also note that this has a perishable timer on it, so these little cuttings are temporary. You can't just store them away forever. So make sure you're being very careful, and as the guide stated, you only get one cutting from each bush per year. But yeah, if I try and plant this here, it's that the ground is not fertile enough. So just a little bit of a rundown on the cuttings, and of course, as the guide mentioned too, you don't need to do any watering of any kind. So it's pretty low maintenance. You just need to get that fertilizer going, get some compost, and of course the other types of fertilizers will work too. If you just got, some bone meal or whatever, saltpeter, throw that on there as well. But you're going to want to probably try and get the compost going for sure. All right, next we're going to talk about the different traits that these bushes can have, which at first I thought was very strange, but at the same time, I think it's cool. It's an interesting little twist to the berry bushes. But first, I do want to note that we can no longer trim or shear berry bushes, sadly. Maybe that's something they will add down the road. I don't really know. Again, we're subject to change. A lot of details could be different in a year, even in, a week. But for right now, shearing does not work. And if I take my scythe too, I was kind of curious about the scythe to see if maybe it would actually dig these up or cut these down, I should say, since, it will with certain agricultural crops, but the scythe does not have any effect on the berry bushes. But again, just something I thought that I would mention to you guys in case you were curious. And if you do have any other questions that I didn't happen to cover, please leave them down in the comment section. But now if we take a look at some of these, none of these bushes currently have any traits, but I think there was a couple over here that did. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here we go. So we're looking at some of the wild ones, which I actually went into creative and planted these. It should be mentioned too that in creative mode, you can pretty much do everything. Yeah, you can plant the bushes. One thing I've noticed too, strangely, let's grab a wild black currant and a regular black currant. I don't know, this might be just a quirk right now with the build, but you can stack the wild, but if you try and stack the regulars, it won't work. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. And again, this is just creative. You're not even going to be able to stack these properly in regular mode, survival mode. And I'm not sure how the double stacks will work. Maybe they'll just happen to sprout, but that's something we'll have to investigate as time goes by. Either way, let's get back to the traits. So up at the top in that tooltip, this one that I'm looking at right here has strong roots, negative 35% nutrient uptake. Now again, for a wild bush, that's not important because you can't put any kind of nutrient or compost on this. And let's just demonstrate that real quick. Actually, I've got some in my inventory. But remember what the guide said, that it will pass on its traits to its other generations. So yeah, it doesn't work when I right click that. We don't get any nutrient, but when we grab that little baby, boom. So now we've got one of the beauty berry cuttings. It doesn't show the trait, but you'll notice too as you go through the world picking up more and more of these little cuttings, a lot of the times they won't stack together, even though it's like 2 black currant or 2 beauty berries. That is probably because of the different traits that they have, which just isn't appearing. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise if you don't specifically remember which bushes you got it from. You're going to just have to plant it and see. But this one here is a shy bear, so that's a negative trait. Negative 15% to yield. That's a bad one. Unless you're really, really desperate, I wouldn't, take a cutting from this one in order to propagate it. Here's just a neutral one with none of the traits, thin-skinned, so negative 30%. 35% ripe duration, so you've got a shorter window to get in here and harvest this one. Again, kind of a negative trait. And these aren't all of them. There's quite a few. I don't know the full exhaustive list, but I did fly around in the world initially just looking for random bushes with traits on them, so maybe I can put a couple up there on the screen. There's one with harvest speed, so weak clustered berries, negative 30% to the harvest speed. So again, another not good trait, but either way, this is one of the most interesting things. It's going to give your bushes a real personality, which is so much fun, but they also look very different too, and not just in the sprites. These bushes are going to be a bit more difficult to spot in the wild once they've got berries on them. Now again, this is a beauty berry that's bountiful. You're not going to see these bountifuls in the wild, and it actually does affect the way that the sprites appear, the berries on the bushes. So in other words, if you have a bush that doesn't have a very good quality or health state, then it's just going to look a little bit less full. So in other words, you're going to have to really adjust your eyes to see, yeah, this one over here is barren, so it definitely appears a little bit less pink than this one. And of course, that holds true with the currants and, the blueberries and raspberries and stuff. Or not raspberries, I'm sorry, cranberries. I almost mislabeled the cranberries. But there we go, everybody. Just a quick look at the bush mechanics here. They're very different, but I like them. I wonder what you guys think. Please let me know down in the comments. Are you going to love this? Are you going to hate this change? Are you going to try and get the very best bushes with only the best traits? I'm very curious, and I can't wait to really dig in and start my own orchard here. But thank you all for joining me for this video. Make sure you subscribe, like it if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you guys on the next one.